talking about this in terms of what I'm calling reframing school as a critical literacy practice. So the purpose of this study was to look at two students writing of drama scripts. And when they wrote these scripts, they were portraying their school cultures, and in doing so, drawing on their experiences in school, and also making intertextual connections to popular culture in writing their scripts. And in the process, I think they're engaging in what I'm calling critical inquiry. And Lisa Wolbert has called another way of looking at it is the literacies of possibilities. So it's like, hey, maybe there's different ways of thinking about school, which for them was pretty negative. Another way of thinking about the creation of drama is the alternative imaginative spaces. And Brian Edmondson, who's done a ton of excellent work on this, and I just recommend his stuff on critical drama inquiry, talks about the notion of dramatic inquiry, socially imagined events and possibilities become visible, an embodied action in a social space that is experienced by participants as if it is actually elsewhere, in a travel agency, in Rwanda, or in Plymouth in 1620. One of the core reasons why as a teacher use drama is because when we create an imagined world, we can imagine we frame events differently, so our power and authority relationships are changed. Pennycock, in a book that I think is the best book about literacy in the last 10 years, Language as a Social Practice, talks about relocalizing events in spaces. So you have locale A, and you have locale B. But you could think about discourses and cultural models in B as reframing or redefining or relocalizing locale A. And in this case, the students were reframing or relocalizing school, in one case, as a prison. Edmondson also talks about tension between the what is and the what if, again, the literacies of possibilities. So you're adopting an ethical stance and thinking about the what is, maybe in terms of the what if. And this also involves moral dilemmas and grappling with moral dilemmas and conflicts. And also, certainly the intertextual links that students make to popular culture really helps in the reframing or relocalizing. So a lot of times they're drawing on parroting, remixing, using popular songs and movies and TV shows. And this really appeals to their audience. In this case, the audience for these scripts were their peers. So the peers really tune in to these intertextual links. There's also, in drama construction, a lot of double voicing of discourses to draw on Bakhtin, where they're constructing identities and stances through double voicing these discourses. When they're talking about prison, this is often using what Wynne is called incarceration discourses. In incarceration discourses, both the staff and wardens and the prisoners buy into the fact they need to be complicit to the rules. In our own work on online role play, we've also seen a lot of examples of sort of double voicing discourses. We have students take on an online role play on a name, they adopt different roles, and they do this drama stuff over weeks about issues they face in school. And a lot of times they'll take up different discourses in constructing their roles. And in one case, they were debating the issue of blocking sites in a school, in their school. And you had these discourses of protection versus discourses of free speech. And Camerels, in his work, has talked about these discourses and these tensions, which is one of the themes of this whole session, in terms of hybrid discourse practice, where you have tension between the external authoritative discourses and internally persuasive discourses. And so the challenge of students are taking up these internally persuasive discourses is against the authoritative discourses. So in this study, we looked at two high school student drama scripts, one by Laura, one by Matthew, and these students were in a drama workshop class in a suburban middle-class Midwestern school, and the teacher was Mr. N. And the data included analysis of the scripts and also interviews with the students. And we looked at the terms of character, story, development, themes in the scripts, but also the relocalization of language in their text and critical discourse analysis, as well as the links. And Mr. N, he sort of created this space that I think fostered critical inquiry, and I just want to quote him. In creating a dramatic text, the students were forced to critically represent their social worlds through the form of narrative or metaphor, their utterances carry with them what they have internalized through participation in the social world. And therefore, when they are reimagined or spoken through the voice of the students, they carry with them an analysis or representation of their social worlds. So Laura's script was called The Daisytown Redemption, in which she portrayed the school world as a prison. And the warden in this play punishes the inmates and gives highly preferential treatment, totally corrupt warden. The gangs are battling with each other, and a lot of intertextual references to the Shanksop Redemption, so you see the connection between the prison and that movie, as well as Jersey Shore, in terms of the conflicts and tensions and these sort of over-the-top reality TV stuff on there. And in this play, Mary is this innocent outsider who's been falsely convicted of murder, and she is sort of positioned to gain audience identification. So we're the innocents also viewing her as the innocent, being taken into this corrupt prison world, which is also the school world. And so she's relocalizing the school culture. And as she says, she's creating a satire about the school system, or at least the public school system. As she said, in AP classes, the ones for which the system works for them. It's the ones outside the system, the ones that rebel, the inmates who don't agree with the system. So she's also doing a lot of double voicing of discourses of authority around the warden, the character of the warden. So with the warden says, you don't need to know my name. You only refer to me as ma'am. This is Daisytown State Co-ed Penitentiary. This is my prison, and you'll play by my rules. Break my rules and I'll break you. Got me? And this is sort of an incarcerated discourse where in that discourse, self-degradation and blame is internalized by the prisoners and reified by these staff, the warden. Quote, there's no room for innocence in this place, says one of the characters. She also uses a lot of intertextual links. At one point in the play, toward the end, they sing the song "We're All in This Together," which is from High School Musical, which is very ironic because they're totally at odds. They're all fighting all the time, so they're not at all in this together. So Laura notes, if you're someone who's well-liked or someone in power, the punishment is much different than if you're powerless, and that's not fair. Writing the script gave me a more critical eye for the world around me. Things that were serious now seem humorous to me. In Matthew's script, it's sort of like a Lord of the Flies thing, which he drew on. There are 4 tribes on this island, and a guy gets, one of the main characters gets washed up on this island. And this really reflects the tensions he saw in his school between the grade levels. And so the groups, the tribes, the grubs are the 9th graders, the Illaputians are the 10th graders, the junior supremes are the 11th graders, and the supremes are the 12th graders. And this also, he was drawing on an annual event. It's a homecoming event where the senior females and the junior females have this pretty violent football game. And it's this annual ritual tied to homecoming. And it's a big deal for these 2 groups. And the administration for a while sort of put up with it, and they realized it's getting really out of hand. But they kind of looked the other way. And he was pretty appalled by this annual ritual because he viewed it as this sort of mindless ritual. And so he draws a lot of intertextual links. He draws on the survivors, again, the Lord of the Flies, this sort of world where evil sort of underlies this whole culture. So the main character, again, is washed up on shore and is given these challenges. So right away, again, you have these parallels between Eric, the main character here, and Mary, who are, again, outsider innocents who come into this different world, and we're sort of meant to identify with this sort of outsider perspective. So in this play, he does, like the other play, a lot of double voicing of discourses, in this case, masculinities. And Eric, the main character, is told, well, if you want to meet some girls in this world, here's some pickup lines. And he's sort of put off by that. He says, well, wait a minute. These pickup lines, he quotes for this is how to get girls to know you're creepy. So he's pushing back against these pickup lines. And he shows these, with what's called the Puff game, which is a parody of this violent game. The TV sports announcers are talking about the game, and so they take up this very sexist discourse. Today, we'll be announcing an epic battle of strength and power for the title of Puff Princess. The game will be between the Almighty Supremes and the less funny, and also the less attractive Junior Supreme. So it's very sort of sexist discourse that he takes up. So again, intertextual links, use of Lord of the Flies, where the characters resort to brutality, issues of power and control, which is very much central to that novel. It's carried over to the Puff battle of Betrayal. Again, relocalizing the school in terms of the conflicts he experienced between these 4 grade levels, relocalizing that school culture in terms of his drama culture. So again, he's drawing on his own experiences to sort of rethink, and so the intertextual links provided him with a lens for thinking about how to frame this drama. So I think it's really when we think about the different texts kids are reading here, they're drawing on this previous experience, but also particularly the familiarity. So you notice audiences are familiar with these texts, so they may then use their intertextual links to understand his play. And I think this was a real interesting theme across both of these texts. So I think these involve sort of literacies of possibilities. So it's the reality of their schoolworld, which both of them, they're sort of both outsiders and they're both critical, but they're seeing here's a way of reframing or dealing with the possibilities of alternative ways of thinking about these worlds. So they're relocalizing the school, both either as prison or as a battle. And again, they're doing the rhetorical move here, creating these main characters as the outsider, innocent character. And that's a very Burkean move, that you're gaining what's called audience identification with your character, and you then identify with that character as who's opposed to these evil characters. And so it's a very clever rhetorical move that I think was pretty effective in the play. Because at the end of both plays, they're both emerge as sort of heroes. At the end of the first play, there's this big battle and everybody's killed, but Mary is rescued by this group of angels that take her away, and she's saved. And at the end, Eric also emerges as successful because he meets this other woman and saves her from dying in the Puff game, and then takes her away. So there's a sort of optimism there. I mean, they don't want to just make it all grim. So they have this sort of comic ending, even though they both said, yeah, this is very serious business. This is very, bad stuff here in these schools. So again, drawing on Edmondson, there's this tension between, and I think the tensions are critical in all these papers, between the what is and the what if. What if we rethought our worlds, our familiar worlds, in these other terms that help us understand the what is. So there's a kind of ethical element to this writing, and there's a lot of interesting previous research on drama writing and performance around ethical dimensions, moral dimensions, and resistance to the status quo. And again, the intertextual links, how the students are using intertextual links to make these sort of thematic connections. And also the tension between the external authoritative discourses, the incarcerated discourses, the discourses of violence, the discourses of masculinity, these sort of top-down, and then the resisting discourses as portrayed in the characters, the internally persuasive discourses. And that's a basic theme in a lot of Botkin's work that I think they were drawing on in their writing. So I think there's value in these critical drama inquiries. Edmondson does a lot with sort of, and if you've ever read any of his stuff or gone to his wonderful NCT sessions, he actually has, students are doing this over a period of time. In one case, he had students create a company for the homeless. And so the company has to set up these roles and how they deal with the homeless. And over time, they actually play this out in the classroom. But he, as modest as a teacher, he'll always sort of throw in these monkey wrenches. He'll sort of complicate the situation. They're dealing with the homeless, but all of a sudden he'll say, well, now, wait a minute, what if this happened? Or you're a bunch of characters, you're tour guides on Mars, and these visitors are coming to Mars and they're blind. So how do you deal with it? So now you're taking them around, they're blind people, you're trying to tell them what's on Mars, but then all of a sudden he said, well now, what if this happens, or what if that happens? So the what if against the what ifs. And so it's wonderful what he does, and the kids really get into this. But they're learning how to think critically about these sort of worlds, and they're also very embodied and they're very engaged in these drama activities. He has a wonderful chapter in a book that our book, Literacy Tools book, which is down in the Teachers College thing. He has a little chapter in there, but he's got some other really good stuff. Right now, he and Pat are working on a big project with the Royal Shakespeare Theater outfit in Ohio State, and they're doing incredible things with drama, critical drama inquiry, and Shakespeare. So student engagement is very evident in their creative productions of these scripts. A sense of potential purpose in terms of they've got to engage their audience, and they were able to do that through these, engaging main characters in their comic innings, but also able to, portray some critical analysis of their school cultures. And again, reframing of the what is in terms of the what is, what if, which I think is very much tied into the literacies of possibilities and critique of institutional forces of power and control. And I think Mr. N sort of talked about this in the interview. Drama gave students a chance to create something from the world around them and reimagine the world around them and live it out again on a stage in front of people. And that's the purpose of drama. They built something they gave an audience to interact with. And so they had this sense of purpose for why they were making these plays. So thank you.